Hello and welcome to the CNBC-TV18 program On the Record with me, Shereen Bhan. After 42 years, IATA is holding its AGM in India, and of course all eyes will be on the Indian aviation story, the robustness of it as well as the future. To talk to us about the flight path for Indian aviation as well as the recent turbulence that we are seeing, joining me now is Air India's Campbell Wilson. Campbell, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Let me start by talking to you about the IATA AGM. It's a 42-year gap that the AGM is now being held in India. You're, of course, not playing host. It's the other airline, Indigo, that's playing the host this time around. But I would imagine that, you know, global aviation companies are going to be here in India to really suss out the opportunity and the market potential. What's the pitch going to be?
Well, goodness, I think the fact that everyone is here is a recognition that people already see the market potential and the growth and the future Air India. You know, it's true to say that there truly is an air about India at the moment. And it's not just the privatization of Air India or the world record orders that ourselves and others in the ecosystem have made. It's the potential. It's already the third largest domestic travel market in the world by air, but it's got a propensity to travel of 1/5 that of China. So the upside potential is absolutely enormous. From an international perspective, it's already a large market, but very underserved by Indian airlines. And so the upside of the Indian airlines realizing a more normal market share is huge. Then, of course, there's the geographic opportunity of people not just traveling to and from India, but traveling through India. You know, it's amazing the number of people that fly over top of India every single year and connect around the sides. You know, bringing that business to connect in India supports Indian jobs, supports Indian cabin crew, Indian ground handlers, Indian engineers, Indian tourism, connects Indian business. And so really this is an opportunity now to really center the world's gravity of aviation onto Indian soil.
Easier said than done, right? I mean, this aspiration of making India the hub for global traffic has been an aspiration that's been on the table for a while now. Many things have changed, especially on the infrastructure side. How real is that possibility today?
I think it's very real. Obviously, as you mentioned, the airport infrastructure side with the concession and the development of very world-class terminals in a number of cities. The privatization of Air India got sort of the monster out of the middle from an economic perspective and has opened up huge investment in fleet and capacity and all of the supporting infrastructure that airline requires. We've seen improvement with things like DigiYatra. If we see that extended to the international market, it makes transit travel much more convenient and people coming into India able to have a much smoother experience than they might have done in the past. There's clearly a lot more that can be done. If we look at other competing hubs around the world, you know, they've taken another step forward with respect to convenience and customer service. But the good news is that they have done it. It's an example for us to learn from, bring back, apply here, and there's no reason why India cannot and enjoy the benefits thereof.
You know, just for the perspective of our viewers who are watching this, where do we currently find ourselves in this opportunity that you speak of? What is India's share of global traffic going through India? And what is the headroom for growth? I mean, what should we aspire for over the next 5 years?
Well, look, the reality is it's very, very low at the moment. Air India, despite being 92 years old and carrying the national aim, really only flies to 40-something destinations around the world, 42 at the moment. Countries with much, much smaller population base fly to double, triple that number. India should be able to support well more than 100 non-stop destinations by Indian carriers. So that then allows for connectivity between those flights. We have most recently started to restructure our network so that people travelling from Europe to Australia can connect within a couple of hours at Delhi. In the past, they used to take 12 or 18 hours to connect. And as a consequence of these changes, we've seen a number of international connecting passengers go from basically zero to about 10% of our load in the last 3 years.
Okay.
For India, the great thing is that it's a nice to have, not a must have. We're always going to have huge traffic to and from India. We can augment it with people transiting across India, which allows us to add more spokes to our network, more frequency to the network, provide more choice for Indian travellers, and also then provide more employment for Indian people and businesses. So the upside really is enormous because we're only scratching the surface at the moment.
Well, speaking of the upside, you know, your aspiration to be an Indian airline with the Indian heart but servicing global markets, and you talked about 40-odd international destinations. I would imagine that aircraft delivery continues to be the key constraint. What should we realistically then expect in terms of expansion of your international operations?
So over the past 3 years, Air India has gone from less than 100 operating aircraft to more than 300. We've increased the international footprint by 25%. So there has been some significant progress already. That was largely from aircraft that had already been manufactured that were able to get at short notice. What we're now waiting for is the first of the 470 aircraft that we had purchased that are being manufactured for us to start being delivered in earnest, and that is going to happen in 2026 and beyond. That is when the next step change in our expansion will take place, particularly internationally, because it will see a more than doubling of our wide-body aircraft fleet from 70 to well over 140. And so that really will allow us to connect the far-flung destinations of the world, North America, Europe, Australasia, and of course more into the Middle East and Africa, and really offer for the first time a true international network of density and breadth from India, and not just from Delhi, obviously from Mumbai, from Bangalore, and there are many other opportunities as well.
Well, so we have to wait for 2026, but let me get an update from you on where things currently stand as far as your discussions with both Boeing as well as Airbus are concerned. There were reports suggesting that because of the back and forth between the US and China on tariffs, that there was going to be at least 10 aircraft available for Air India, and potentially Air India Express was talking to Boeing for that. Is there any progress on that?
Well, I think relations have normalized a little bit between the US and China, so we don't see the opportunity quite so open as it might have been. Maybe that's a good thing for the world, not necessarily a good thing for us. But clearly the pace of expansion is contingent on the speed of deliveries and whether they're line fit or made available from others. We continue to pursue all opportunities. We're always talking to the manufacturers about what might become available.
So if the China 10 aircraft that was on the table is no longer on the table, what visibility do you have both from Boeing as well as Airbus? Last time we spoke about the delays. Has there been any improvement in the supply chain issues that both manufacturers were facing, which gives you more clarity on what the delivery schedule is likely to be?
Yeah, so there has been improvement in the supply chain, and there's many parts of the supply chain, whether it's seats, engines, fuselage components, other components on an aircraft. So I think we've seen improvement across the board in all of those areas. It does mean that the manufacturers are sounding more confident about the delivery dates that they've committed to. It's probably not going to be the case that they can bring them any earlier, but the likelihood of them being pushed later seems to be receding, which is good news.
So by 2027, what is the expected fleet size likely to be if everything is on schedule?
Well, I don't think we've put an exact number to it, but we have 308 aircraft operating at the moment. We have 540 odd yet to be delivered. Most of those will come before the end of the decade, so clearly there's going to be a significant expansion, a doubling or thereabouts.
Since we are talking about current developments, let me ask you about what's happening in the US at this point in time. We've seen a double-digit decline in international arrivals, 15% lower from the UK, 20+% lower from Germany, Canada, similar story, South Korea, similar story. What does it look like from India at this point in time in terms of Indian traffic to the US? Are you seeing a visible decline?
At this juncture, no, but there are a lot of moving parts. For example, some of the airspace restrictions that we presently have to operate around mean that we can't carry a full passenger load on some of our non-stop flights. And so that has had an impact on the number of people we're able to uplift, which is completely independent than any concern about economics or immigration or tariffs. So because there are so many moving parts, we can't isolate any one thing. But at this juncture, we don't think that there's been a significant impact in the underlying demand, in part because so many of the people that we're carrying are visiting friends and relatives, and that typically is quite robust.
But are you concerned about, for instance, the grey that's emerging now as far as student visas are concerned? Is that potentially a cause for concern?
I think it has to be. Anytime there is uncertainty, we have to be concerned, and it can be uncertainty across any number of dimensions. We operate in a business which in some respects is discretionary travel. People have a choice about where they travel to. The ease of travel in terms of visa and other dimensions is a factor in people's thinking. So anything that causes uncertainty means that we We're monitoring closely.
So let's talk about the park airspace closure, because the closure came in on the 24th of April. That's well ahead of Operation Sindoor. Now, from an operational perspective, you said you cannot carry a full payload at this point in time. Take me through what that's actually meant in terms of operations, flight cancellations, rerouting. What is all of that meant for Air India?
Well, so domestically, a number of airports were closed.
Yes.
13 cities that Air India Group operated to, we had to cease operations. Unfortunately, that affected some 70-odd thousand people, nearly 1,000 flights, and we assisted people very quickly to get to their destinations as best we could. That was something completely beyond our control. On the international side, once the airspace was closed, we needed to take a different route. And that meant longer flying times to Europe and to North America. And in some cases for North America, it meant having to make an en route refueling stop in order to reach the destination. We adjusted to that very quickly. I think we managed to minimize the disruption to customers quite well. And then very quickly we looked at how do we optimize the operation so that we can continue to operate the connectivity and the customer proposition that people have selected us for. So most of our flights now have been reinstated to Nonstop. Sometimes
and how you managed to do that?
So that's sometimes with a reduction in the payload that we carry, whether it's the amount of cargo we carry or a reduction in the number of seats that we fill.
So how many seats have you had to drop, as well as what's the decline as far as carrying of cargo is concerned?
So it's very route specific, and it even depends on the wind and weather conditions on a particular day.
But typically to North America?
So on some routes, routes 0. On some routes, as much as 20 or 30 seats. But
20 or 30 seats?
Yes, so it is significant, but the point is that we've been able to sustain non-stop service, which is the key reason that people are flying us, the key competitive proposition. On a couple of routes, we are taking an en route refueling stop. That's typically a very short refueling stop of 45 to 60 minutes, certainly much shorter than it would typically be if you got off an aircraft, did a transit experience and got on another one. So I think the elapsed time remains very, very competitive, but it's just not quite as convenient as it was before, so therefore a little bit frustrating for the consumer, clearly a little bit frustrating for us, and obviously it adds cost to the operation.
I'll get to the cost part in just a second, but have you had to cancel any flights? Are you re-looking at some of the destinations that you're flying to on account of the closure?
No, so we haven't cancelled any flights thus far. Depending on how things go and the extent to which wind conditions mean that flights become more difficult to viably operate, we may take a few tactical cuts here and there, but the intention is to maintain the operation as robustly as we can.
So let's talk about costs now, because it's been widely reported that if the airspace closure were to extend for a year, it could cost Air India upwards of 5,000 crore rupees, or approximately 5,000 crore rupees, and that's the estimate that has been given to the government in the many meetings that have taken place with the government on this issue so far. Is that accurate?
Yes, we were asked to give a ballpark cost of what this would be for us, and so we provided a number.
So it is approximately 5,000 crores, upwards of 5,000 crores?
It's approximately. Now we're obviously working to reduce the impact by whatever means we can. But yes, that's a ballpark figure.
If it were to continue for a year. You know, in the previous instance when we did see the park airspace closure, and that was about a period of about 3 months or so, what was the impact then? What kind of a hit did you take then?
That was before my time, so I don't have those numbers off the top of my head.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, it's a significant cost.
So what is the way forward now? We don't know how long the airspace closure will last. Where do conversations with the government lie? Again, widely reported that there was talk around a possible bailout package, some sort of a subsidy, some kind of government support and intervention. Are any of those things moving forward?
No, I think, just to be clear, we were asked to provide a ballpark cost of what the impact would be. We have had a number of discussions with government on how we might mitigate those costs and make travel more convenient for people, whether it be fuel taxes or other things that we can do that provide some mitigation. But we're not in any active negotiations or discussions with anyone. Obviously, the government is going to take the positions they'll take from a geopolitical perspective, and we'll adjust accordingly.
So what kind of support would you then be hopeful of in a scenario like this?
We're a business that needs to operate. We try and operate on our own 2 feet. We're adjusting our operations to be as viable as we can, notwithstanding challenging circumstances, and we'll continue to do that.
But what would the ask be specifically? I mean, I'm sure that there has been a list of things that the industry, not just Air India, but industry has put forward to the government, to seek some sort of intervention at this point in time. Could you list that out for us?
I think it's probably better that any such discussions happen behind closed doors and not through the media.
Let's talk about some of the other developments that have taken place. There has been the revocation of the security clearance for the ground handling operator Chelobee, and that has impacted operations across 8 or 9 airports at this point in time. Have you seen that impact operations for you specifically?
So there's been a very smooth transition to alternate providers. So there hasn't been a disruption to us or our customers, at least at the airports that we serve. Transitions like this are never completely easy, but I think it's been very well handled in this case.
Since we are talking about Chelobee, again, widely reported that Air India did reach out to the government about Indigo's wet lease with Turkish Airlines. Is that accurate?
No, I think we quite categorically refuted that allegation. It's not our place to comment on business relationships such as that. The government will make their own call.
Let's then talk about the opportunities that open up with the Navi Mumbai airport coming in and the Jewar airport coming in as well. Jewar, of course, after Navi Mumbai. What will this result in terms of moving traffic, of where passengers are going to be boarding their flights from, and what is it going to mean specifically as far as Air India and the Air India group is concerned?
Well, we continue to have discussions with all of the airport operators, and we're very interested at these new airports that are being developed, not just in Navi Mumbai and Jewar. In the case of Navi Mumbai, it's probably the most imminent new opening. And so we have been in discussions about what capacity we'll operate from there. It's a little bit more complex in our case because we're a hub operator. We bring people into an airport and disperse on the rest of our network. So we need to be careful which flights we might move from the existing airport to the new airport so we don't weaken the hub. But clearly we want to be present in Navi Mumbai. It's a good airport, it's a good geography, it will have its own catchment. And so we'll be making some announcements to that effect relatively soon. In the case of Jewar, we think it's quite a different catchment. Again, we want to be present in that market, but it's probably going to be additions rather than any transfers from the Indira Gandhi international operation.
Okay, so additions for Jewar, but as far as the Navi Mumbai airport is concerned, you are going to have to reconfigure current operations and current connectivity. What percentage do you see moving from the current Mumbai airport infrastructure to Navi Mumbai?
Well, I won't speak specifically for Air India Group, but as it's been communicated to us by the operator, they want to do some redevelopment work on one of their existing terminals, which reduces their overall airport capacity by, I believe, around 20–25%. And so I believe that's around the proportion of traffic that they want to shift from the existing airport to Navi Mumbai whilst they're doing this redevelopment work.
Okay. How challenging is the environment today? Crude is still relatively benign. We haven't actually seen any significant moves on the upside as far as crude is concerned. But outside of that, there have been many of these operational challenges that we just spoke of. What does that mean in terms of operating costs for you? What does it mean in terms of your ability to be able to curtail losses? You brought down losses quite significantly to about 4,500 crores from over 11,000 crore rupees year on year. All of this impacts your ability to cut losses?
Well, I mean, we're very happy to see a marginal reduction in the price of fuel. It's about 40% of our cost, so it is significant. We continue to make good progress in improving revenues. We've more than doubled revenues in the last couple of years. We've tripled cargo revenues over the past 3 years. And in terms of costs, we've put a lot of investment into the business to improve premises, product, IT systems, whole gamut of things. That will take a while to pay off, and we sized that investment to support an airline that is much larger than the one we have today. So all of these investments and improvements and cost reductions that we're now underway, now taking, will lead to a much stronger financial position, but it's with the long term in mind, not something that we're doing as a band-aid or quick fix.
But on the cost reduction side, I mean, is there room for you to be able to bring down costs even further, especially with the use of technology and what you've been able to do on that front? How much more can you eke out in terms of cost?
I think we can make quite significant progress on cost reduction. Now, there's a story that needs to be told here, because when we took over Air India, it had suffered from many decades of underinvestment in aircraft and systems and premises and product and support infrastructure. And it was a business that was in quite a significant risk of collapse. The average age of employees was 54, for example. There were 30 aircraft on the ground for want of spare parts. So we had to stabilise the ship through significant, fast investment. Then we had to quickly prepare the business for growth. We've gone from less than 100 aircraft to 300 aircraft in operation in under 3 years. Nearly an aircraft a week being added to the operation. And then with aspirations to grow very much bigger with this 470 aircraft order. So we had to go from stabilisation to preparation for the future, sufficiency, and now efficiency. And so we're very much now in that efficiency phase of making all of the investments that we've made over the past few years starting to pay off, both in revenue generation as well as in the cost of operation. And so it's a 5-year transformation. We're targeting that end of 5 years to bring all of these together. And so I think, as you've rightly said, the world-class global airline with an Indian heart should be visible by then.
You know, the transformation plan, Vihan, and it is a 5-year plan, as you talk about. One of the metrics there was a 30% market share. You're edging closer to that, almost to 27%.
Yes.
You know, on the many milestones that you've chalked out for yourself in terms of where you want to be at the end of 5 years, at the end of Vihan, where do you feel the most confident of being able to achieve those numbers and those metrics?
I'm confident on all of them, to be honest. Over the past 3 years, I think we've done all of the heavy lifting of what was necessary to do behind the scenes. Merging of the 4 airlines, upgrading the physical premises, upgrading completely the IT infrastructure, onboarding 15,000 new staff with new skills and capabilities, 6,000 staff leaving us mostly voluntarily. Improving the service proposition, improving the operations, our commercial capabilities, our HR capabilities. And the evidence is really starting to show. For the last quarter of the last financial year, which was the first quarter post-merger, Air India achieved record OTP, and it achieved an on-time performance higher than what Vistara was achieving. It achieved record Net Promoter Score, higher than what Vistara had been achieving. For the first quarter of this financial year, it's gone up even further in both respects. The new Air India is now visible on the A350s serving London, Heathrow and New York. It has an NPS well above 60. And really, everyone I talk to is quite blown away that this is the new Air India. Over the next 2 years, as we refit the legacy fleet and bring the rest of the fleet up to that standard, the new Air India, hopefully, is going to be something that people experience on every flight, every day.
You know, you talked about the refit, and the last time we spoke, that was going through its own challenges, and there were delays there, both in terms of time as well as in terms of cost overrun. Has there been any improvement? What's the latest there as far as the retrofit is concerned? So
on the narrow-body side, we're 3/4 of the way through the full-service fleet. We should complete the refit of the narrow-body aircraft by the end of this year.
Okay.
And already we're deploying the refitted or Vistara aircraft on the main metro routes, on which we now have 50% market share. So I think we've made good progress on the domestic side. On the wide-body side, which serve the long-haul international routes, about 35% of the aircraft have been upgraded. The first of the legacy aircraft goes into their hangar next month to undergo a complete refit. Once that aircraft is certified by October or so this year, we'll be able to put 2 or 3 aircraft every month through the refit program until all are complete. That will take until 2027 or thereabouts, but we have good line of sight now, good confidence, and really it's a mechanical process to bring things to closure. Okay, so that's still another 2 years on before we actually see the retrofit program being complete. Yes, but every month you will see more and more aircraft with the refitted product into service. So it's going to be a progressive thing. You know, you talked about the new Air India. Give me a sense of what's changed as far as people is concerned. The average age, was well over 50, and what is it today? So it was of non-flying staff, it was 54 when we took over. It's now about 35. Okay. For cabin crew, it was in the high 40s. It's now 29. So a significant generational change. Significantly younger airline. Yes, yes. Look, the erstwhile Air India had not recruited for nearly 20 years, at least for non-flying staff, in part because it was shrinking. in part because there were cost constraints. And so, just culturally, experientially, people with contemporary understanding of aviation, the erstwhile Air Indians had done a wonderful job in keeping the airline flying under some of the most difficult circumstances imaginable, and have done a wonderful job in transitioning to a very, very different work environment and imparting their knowledge to new colleagues. But an organisation needs to continue to have new blood and new ideas in order to survive and prosper.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to do that over the past 3 years. And the fact that people have come together so well, I think, is in part testament, one, to trust in Tata, two, to love for the Air India brand and name, which most people was their first flying experience, and three, to be part of this mission of restoring a 92-year-old company that really carries the flag of India still, to represent India around the world in the way that today's India wants to be represented. And so I think many people see this as much as a mission as it is a job, and that's why it's so wonderful to be part of it. And I'm so honoured to be part of it, because we really do think we're doing something more than just turning around a company. We're doing something that has a national significance.
You talk about this being a mission and not just a job for you. So at this point in time, what are the projects or the tasks that you find yourself in mission mode on specifically?
Mission mode. Well, it's evolved over the course of the last 3 years simply because the nature of the task has been different. And, as I say, going from stabilisation to sufficiency, now efficiency. My principal focus is now on consistency and on making sure we're performing as a business, whether it's from an operational perspective, a financial perspective, or customer service. The retrofit program is clearly number one in doing that from a customer perspective. But the robustness of our operations, making sure that we're operating consistently, reliably, is still consuming a lot of time. We're making good progress, but we've got some way to go there too. But look, I'm very, very confident about the future of Air India, and I think that I hope the rest of India can get behind us, because we are going to be flying your flag around the world for many years to come.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of On the Record. From all of us here on the team for now, goodbye, many thanks for watching. Do stay tuned. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18.